Hi, good morning. I was having a very hard time to fall asleep yesterday. I am going through some mental tense, or I would say mental catastrophization. A large amount of anxiety going on inside my inner mind, and it is making me to escape into activities or indulge into compulsive obsessive patterns or familiar patterns that I have developed over the period of growing up to cope with life, which I have been trying to negate these days. Anyways, um, luckily I was able to get some sleep later. But another thing, I was also catching emotion of my brother. He was also very much restless in the whole night, and he's going through withdrawal. I mean, recently changed his medication, and the previous medication was helping a lot with sleep, but it has a deteriorating effect on the body, and that's why mm, we have changed to a new medication, which is taking a lot of time to adjust with his body, and hopefully it will be okay after 2 or 3 minutes. But I was catching a lot of emotions of his watching his restlessness. I mean, whether I can do anything about it, and I'm feeling enormous amount of anger, anxiety, or mental catastrophization, and mental phobia um, in my mind, and my sensitivity has increased too. Like what I was feeling yesterday is kind of like in the next moment that catastrophic event will happen. My phobia was telling me, but the truth is, at the present moment, I don't have any danger. I was trying to ground myself with whatever tools and techniques I have. Meditation, on grounding techniques, exercising. Um, but I think I did 20 80, 20% I did healthy practices, 80% I did destructive patterns like emotional eating, and other compulsive activities to find some comfort. Anyways, hopefully this will get better, and I'm using this vlog as a keystone to be regular in my life. Like I had developed a lot amount of these stuffs over the period of time, but for the period uh, right now I am, and this is really helping me. Mm, at one point I used to record myself in private mode, because I wanted to avoid the feedback loop, my human urge to go back online and check who is looking at. And even I have turned down all the videos in the private that I made during that time, um, so that I do not feel that compulsive urge to go to the web and check my views or whatever. Anyways, these days I'm not doing that. Like to avoid that tendency, I was trying to stop the process completely. Recently, I learned that that was not healthy. Like I was becoming anorectic to social interactions as well as being open in front of public. And anyways, I'm doing it for myself, so it doesn't really matter whether mm, someone else is watching or not. So I will start reading. I was having very hard time to find the book papers, like up to which point I have read mm, prior. A disturbing demonstration of depletion effects in judgment was recently reported in the proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. The unwitting participants in the study were eight parole judges in Israel. They spent entire days reviewing applications for parole. The cases are presented in narrow order and the judges spend a little time on each one, on average of 6 minutes. The default decision is denial of parole. Only 35% of requests are approved. The exact time of each decision is recorded and the times of the judges. Three food breaks, morning break, lunch, and afternoon break during the day are recorded as well. The authors of the study plotted the proportion of approved requests against the time since the last food break. The proportion spikes after each meal when above 65% of requests are granted. During the 2 hours or so until the judge's next meeting, the approval rate drops steadily to about mm, zero just before the meal. As you might expect, this is an unwelcome result, and the authors carefully checked many alternative explanations. The best possible account of the data provides bad news. Tired and hungry judges tend to fall back on the easier default position of denying requests for parole. Both fatigue and hunger probably play a role. The LEGI System 2. One of the main functions of System 2 is to monitor and control thoughts and actions suggested by System 1, allowing some to be expressed directly in behavior and allowing some to be expressed um, directly in behavior and suppressing or modify others. For example, here is a simple example or puzzle. Do not try to solve it, but listen to your intuition. A bat and ball cost $1.10. The bat costs $1 more than the ball. How much the ball cost? A number came to your mind. The number, of course, is 10 cents. The distinctive mark of this easy puzzle is that it evokes an answer that is intuitive, appealing, and wrong. Do the math and you will see. If the ball costs 10 cents, then the total cost will be $1.20. 10 cent for the ball and $1.10 for the bat, not $1.10. The correct answer is 5 cents. Mm, it is safe to assume that the intuitive answer also came to the mind of those who ended up with the correct number. They somehow managed to resist the intuition. Shane Patrick and I worked together on the story on theory of judgment based on two systems, and he used the pattern ball puzzle to study the central question: how closely does system 2 monitor the suggestions of system 1? His reasoning was that we know a significant fact about anyone who says that the ball cost 10 cents. The person did not actively check whether the answer was correct, and the system 2 endorsed an intuitive answer that it could have rejected with a small investment of effort. Furthermore, we also know that The people who give the intuitive answer have missed an obvious social cue. They should have wondered why anyone would include in a questionnaire a puzzle with such an obvious answer. A failure to check is remarkable because the cost of checking is so low. A few seconds of mental work. The problem is moderately difficult. With slightly tensed muscles and dilated pupils could avoid an embarrassing mistake. People who say Tencent appear to be ardent followers of the law of least effort. People who avoid that answer to have more active minds. Many thousands of university students have answered the pattern ball puzzle, and the results are shocking. More than 50% of students at Harvard, MIT, and Princeton give the intuitive incorrect answer. At less selective universities, the rate of demonstrable failure to check was in excess of 80%. The pattern ball problem is our first encounter with an observation that will be a recurrent theme of this book. Many people are overconfident and prone to place too much faith in their intuitions. I really love this tune. I have changed it yesterday and I'm loving it right now. Anyways, the reading is mostly about um, an example of law of least effort and like how blind faith to intuition can lead us to embarrassing mistakes. Um, and as I have said, a law of least effort is something that comes up into mind to trust it blindly. Like we go through the familiar pattern of mind and mm, could not negate the lazy mind or the laziness ingrained within us, given to us through evolution. Like most of the cases, um, we tend to follow the first answer that comes into my mind, and logical answers or something that doesn't make sense seems carrying a huge amount of emotional feelings to us. And that is obviously a lot amount of problematic. I mean, obviously hugely problematic for us, and I would definitely love to avoid this. And even the parallel problem, I still cannot figure out the answer. I need to check, or even I need to seek help. And that is also true for me that I go with irrational and emotional answers, and um, most of the cases, like I used to consider myself as a hyper rational or hyper realist, but most of the cases, like following emotions or intuitions derived from emotions had created enormous amount of trouble in my personal life. So which I'm trying to negate these days, keep myself safe from stupid emotions. Like emotions are important, but the thing is that it makes us humans, like rather than this a bot, or like I used to think at a point like if I could ever become a human bot when emotions are were troubling me a lot. But later I realized like I cannot numb myself using these agents like food or other things. Unless I let myself feel the discomfort or the pain, or um, something that my emotion is telling me to do at that moment. So I will conclude with that, like feeling the emotions fully at that moment and validating it with truth of that moment is important, that I have learned um, through all the work I have done lately. So thanks a lot for listening.